Hello and welcome to another Blender Know-How tutorial. This video is going to be a little bit longer than usual, but hang in there, this is going to be a good one. We're going to make a Mac Mini today based off the 2020 ARM M1, the current Gen 1. So we're going to make it based off of that. Let's just go ahead and dive right in. So this is what we're going to be looking at. This is what we're making. So I hope you guys are excited. This is the file that I have that I made currently. So we're going to get in here even the details of the pins on the Ethernet ports and the fans here. We're gonna have some fun. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. Let's start with this default cube and let's turn it into the basic shape of the Mac. We're going to use this as the outside shell. So just as this is going to be this part. Okay, cool. So let's go here in edit mode. And I'm going to work in wireframe so we can see the entire thing here. And I'm just going to make it smaller this way. That's about the approximate shape. And then I'm going to just make it a little bit bigger. Something like that should do. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here to Modifier, add a new modifier and a Subdivision Surface. And I'm going to crank up these things to 3. I'm going to be doing most of the subdividers in this tutorial going to be 3. So when in doubt, that's what it is. Also, I don't want to forget this. My screencast keys. Now you can see exactly what keys I'm pressing to do the different things that I'm doing. Okay, so first off, let's go into solid, back into solid now, and it does not look like a Mac Mini yet. Woo! We've established that we aren't done yet, which if you didn't know, we aren't. So let's go ahead and I'm going to add 2. So if you scroll up on your mouse wheel, so you hit Control R and then hit scroll up once, you'll actually get 2. I'm going to now hit, so I clicked and I'm going to hit S and scale them out on the X axis. And then I'm going to go to the top view and I'm going to do 2 and do the same thing. Just like that. But this is going to be the Y axis. Now what we're doing here is I'm mainly paying attention to these corners. Nothing else really matters, just these corners. And those are approximately the shape of the Mac Mini corners-ish. These don't have to be perfect, but if you want it to be sharper, then just put it closer to the edges. But I think that's looking decent. So let's roll with that. Now what we need to do is we need to add some more definition in these corners because the Mac Mini is very sharp on the top and bottom edges. So there's different ways you can do this. Like you can actually select these edge points and play with the mean crease. I don't like that because sometimes it gets buggy and I don't think it's quite as reliable. So I just usually go with these and do the same process. Now, we're not going to see the definition that we want yet based off of just these 2 points because we don't have it on the top 2. We would almost need to have another one here, but then that ruins our corners. So we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to just add another one. This will do essentially the same thing. But as we move these closer up there, it will average between those 3. And you actually, that should be good enough for the points. If you add more, I could be wrong, but it won't actually increase it won't increase those anymore. It's actually treating, fun fact, it's actually treating this one as the corner, and so it's actually raised a little bit. If you wanted to make this more perfect, you would scale this down and make it more appropriate would be like to have this in here a little ways and down. But I'm not going to worry about that because it does the curve just fine with those there. So now if we go into object mode and shade smooth, we can see that it looks like the base Mac Mini, just the shape of it. Okay, now what we need to do is this is the most complicated part for me when I was making this, is this part right here. How to make this the simplest and easiest way. And I found out a pretty good way, I think. So what we're going to do is let's take this, Shift D to duplicate it. And then, so now we are also going to add another cube. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to do some Boolean magic here. That's what I'm going to call it for the time being. So we're going to scale this up to roughly where we want the edges of this to be. So I want this to be maybe here. I don't know. We can always change this later because it's a Boolean and they will run live. And then I'm going to decrease this to be right about there. And you can see this is not round, so we can add a modifier here, Subdivision Surface. And we can increase that to 3 and add roundish curves like that. Actually, to make that the same way we do before, this will give it symmetrical sides, or there will be symmetry. There we go. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now what we just did here, this is going to be cutting into one of these cubes. So we have 3 cubes here. Maybe I'm going to rename this into be the base, and then this one's going to be the black back. I don't know what else to call them, so that's going to be what it is. This is going to be what we're cutting the black back out of. So let's go here, click Boolean, and then put that in there. And then I'm just going to hide this for now. And you can see we've got some stuff going on. One of which, so let's go back to the black back here. We can move it around a little bit. What we want to do here is actually intersect. So now that is all we see of the black back. Now you can see there's some problems here. There's an easy fix. You just go here to edge split and put it here at the bottom. And now that got rid of some more problems, but you can't see. Follow along for just a second because you won't notice this until a second. I'll show you that again. So if I go back to base, we are also going to want to Boolean cut the cube 2 out as well. And you can just click on that. And we also want to do that edge split here as well. So that's looking pretty good now. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and explain some of that what I just did here. So with this edge split, I'm just going to turn it off for a minute. That's what it would have looked like without the edge split. Edge split kind of cleans up your Boolean because without it, the shading on this, it doesn't really know what to do, and it's because of where the vertices are placed, and so every edge over 30 degrees is done a little differently with this Boolean. So quick Boolean hack, that's it right there, really easy. Okay, so that doesn't quite look like what we want though, I don't think. We want to, I think we want it to be a little bit wider, or I don't know, that's just kind of what I'm getting here. So I'm going to go into Wireframe, hit Control-1 to go to the back, and then I'm going to select the whole thing, and then just S, and then lock it to the X-axis. And I'm going to pull it out a little bit, and I'm also going to select just the inside ones and do SX to do that as well. I'm also going to maybe just add vertices here just to make it cleaner as far as it's going to be cutting straight back. Does that make sense? And I'm going to hide this. And it does both of them at the same time. So this is a really cool process for many different things. So I'm liking how this is turning out. I think I'm going to roll with this. And let's move on. The edges look like they might not be exactly the way. So I don't know, that's going to be different for everyone because you can't just copy it exactly. But that's okay. So let's go ahead and start making some of the other components in this. So let's start off by adding a cube, and I'm going to move it to the front. I usually like to keep the origin close to this back plate as possible. It just makes it easier to work with in the long run. So I'm just going to scale it down. Let's start by making this component, okay? Because this will kind of be the basis of everything else where we place it, because we know where the other things go in comparison to it. It'll keep our proportions a little bit better. So I'm going to hit Control-1 to go back to the back. I'm going to move it down here, roughly that size, and then I'm going to scale it along that size, somewhere in that, okay? And then I'm going to subdivide, make it 3, and right-click, Shade Smooth, add these in there. Actually, do the same thing I was doing before. Click 1, or Control-1. Does that look pretty round enough for me. Yeah, looking good. So now I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to hit Boolean and I'm going to click on the eyedropper and click that and click hide or H on your key, your thing. Now it broke this again. Now you may think, okay, let's just add another edge split, but don't do that. Just drag your edge split down. You just want your edge split to be on the bottom of the stack. So now let's actually unhide that cube that we just did because we got a couple problems. It's round on this axis right here, and we don't want that because we want it to be pulled in a little bit because we're going to add some fins in here. So let's I'm going to go into wireframe so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to stretch it out and then move it in here a little ways. It doesn't have to be perfect because they're not going to see the whole inside, so they're not going to see all the way back here, but this will make it good. And these don't have to be perfect either because we're just using this to Boolean cut. So now if we hide this, go back into solid mode, we now have this cutout piece. Okay, cool. So now let's go ahead and add the fins in there. I'm going to hit add mesh cube. I'm going to go into the side view and move it over, hit tab, and scale it down. Okay, that's looking good for that side. I'm going to hit Control 1, go to the front, go back into object mode, and place the origin somewhere in here so that it's not up there. It makes more sense to have it here. So now I'm going to go back into wireframe, select all the edges, S, and then I'm going to make this really skinny because those fins are skinny. So that's looking pretty good. And I'm going to hit 3. I keep on hitting 2 and 3 at the same time. And I'm going to pull these edges all the way back and these edges somewhere in here. I'm going to grab the bottom 2. When I say 2, there's 2 vertices there. And then I'm going to pull them down in here and pull that up in here. Because the fans in this are somewhat on an angle. When I was looking at pictures, I don't actually have a Mac Mini, so I don't actually know. But that's kind of what I pictured. So now if I go into solid mode, we have one fin. I'm just going to drag this all the way over here, and it's okay that my origin is off with this because this still can be considered the origin for all of these because we're going to just now array them. So let's go to add modifier, click array, and let's just punch in 50, and you can see that it put 50 going the opposite direction. So let's just drag this. And how far spaced do we want them? I don't know, looking good like that, somewhere in that range. Maybe even, I actually think I like it a little closer. And then maybe I'm going to make this is just a personal taste, but maybe make it a little thicker so you can see the fins a little easier maybe. I don't know. And then something like that, because when you're out here, you want to be able to see the fins. Yeah, that gives it that fin effect. Okay, and then I'm just going to maybe increase the distance and increase the amount. So you can play with that. There's no real science to this, but you do kind of want this side to be equal to that side. I don't know. Maybe it's just a perfectionist type thing where you want this side to be equal. I don't know. So I was looking pretty good. And yeah, so let's move on to the next component. Let's start making some USB ports. So I'm going to add mesh a cube again. Go into the side view, move it to the back, move it up a little bit, hit Control 1, go into tab, edit mode, scale it down, and I'm going to make it something in this range and about that size. And I'm going to move it down here. And as I've built this, I already noticed that our Mac Mini is too tall, I think. We will have to shorten that, and that's okay. That's not going to be that hard because of the things that we did before with the Boolean modifiers. So I'm just going to look around. Yeah, I think that'll work there. So then let's make this have a subdivision. I'm going to go 3 once again. You guys don't have to do 3. I don't know what your computer specs are, but I think 3 should work fine for this project. And that looks like about the rough shape of a USB port. And then we need it to be deeper, and I'm going to do this as well. So just give it that shape. Okay, cool. And let's cut it. So let's add a Boolean, hit the eyedropper, click on that guy, and also drag the edge split down. Now this is going to be roughly on this way a little bit. I'm also going to just throw in an array. You can either duplicate it or array it either way, but that will give us that freedom. We can do whatever we want that way. So now if we hide those, we now have USB ports. Okay, cool. Now, actually, let's fix one thing. Let's unhide that, what we just did. and shade smooth. I don't know if we did that or not, but yeah, that looks a little better already. Okay, cool. So let's fix our size of this because this is a little bit high. So I'm just going to click on the base and go into wireframe, hit Control 1 and on your numpad, and then I'm just going to scale it down to what I think is a little bit better height. That looks a little better already. Go back into solid, just so you can see what I'm doing here a little easier. And then we want to go into the cube that we used to cut. Yeah, it's this one, cube 2. We could name it. I'm horrible at naming, so I might just neglect to do that, but you guys can. So I'm going to go into wireframe, select those top vertices, and move it down to where the top of this would be. If you go back into solid view, you can see a little easier here. So that looks like it could be. That looks pretty good right there. Now hide it again, and we got some stuff going on. Okay, so that was kind of a weird thing. So I just had to take a quick second to look at some things with this, but yeah, so the easiest way to fix this is what's happening. So I'm going to hide this. What's happening is it's not actually Boolean cutting this. So if we come in here, I'm not actually sure the exact reason, but it has to do with this overlap. So if we just increase this just a hair, okay, we got to decrease it, my bad. So we need to decrease it. It was because of the overlap threshold. So that's what the problem is. So I'm going to go back and unhide the black back here, and we're good to go again. Okay, cool. So you might have to do some of that while doing it. I don't want to cut out these moments because I think these are really great moments to learn and some of that debugging. So, okay, let's go ahead and add the other, let's start with the USB ports over here because they're fairly easy. So let's do cubes again. Actually, let's do this. Let's actually delete that and take our cubes that we used for our USB ports and just duplicate that over here. And let's just play with those vertices. So I'm going to go into wireframe mode so I can just move them down. Something like that. And then I'm going to add those in. And those look like USB ports now. So let's not hide them yet, but let's add a Boolean for that. And eyedropper, drag the edge split down, and hide them. Yep, look like pretty good USB ports. We might want to maybe hit 7 and cut them in a little deeper, and maybe a little bit in this way. Something like that, maybe. Nah, I do like it there. Okay, cool. So this is also a little bit of personal preference where you put these things. Okay, now I'm going to hide both of those. So now we have some USB ports. Actually, instead of hiding them, I'm also now going to move these back too a little bit. Okay, now we can hide them. Just to give it more depth because you can see the depth of these a little bit. And we want them to look like USB ports and stuff like that. So, okay, let's now make a HDMI port. So I'm going to actually take the USB-C port right here, and I'm going to duplicate it. So Shift-D to duplicate it over. Get rid of the array, hit Control-1. I'm going to move it up a little bit, hit Tab, go into Wireframe, select these middle 4, and let's just try this. If we move this down a little bit, just by extruding it, and add some loop cuts in here to give it more definition. Nope, don't like that one. Let's take these, move them down, and then scale it on the x-axis. Now, if we add those loop cuts, yeah, let's add those loop cuts there. Doesn't really matter if we have good topology, just the basic shape here, because when we use the Boolean, and I'm going to drag it up now, and then click that, and we hide it. That actually looks fine. I think that should be fine as far as an HDMI port. Maybe a little big, honestly. I don't know, or maybe it needs to be wider. So maybe we'll tweak that real quick. I'm just going to make it a little wider, a little shorter that way. Something like that. That I think it looks a little bit better already. Cool. I'm also now going to maybe make it a little bit bigger on the y-axis and push it deeper so that we don't see the bad topology in the back. So that works out great. Okay, I'm not going to hide These, I don't think we need them anymore, so that's the last time you should hide them. And let's add the Ethernet port. This one's a pretty easy one. Just add a cube, bring it up here, tab, scale, tab, bring it up here a little ways, maybe a little too much. And then on the x-axis, move it over, hit Control-1 to go to the front, and I'm going to place it right here. Okay, now one thing about Ethernet ports, they're not exactly square, but they're pretty close, so just scale it down a little short, and we're good. That one's done. We can just add it as a Boolean, and let's do that. Hide it. You may want to, just for added realism, you could add this as a subdivision, increase it a little bit, go in here and give it some loop cuts. This, because the thing is like, even things that have very sharp edges are, things that have very sharp edges still aren't perfectly like sharp. So this will simulate that edge there. And if we go back out and we hide it, it still looks sharp, but you know, it gives a little extra depth, especially when you do the shading here. So I think that's good. I'm gonna move it back a little bit and maybe make it a little deeper. Okay, that's looking good. Now I'm just gonna hide it. Cool. Looks pretty much like he did, so you could get away with not even doing the subdivision stuff. That's fine either way. Cool. Now let's do the charging port. This is probably the most complex shape, so stay with me on this one. So to make it simpler, we're going to just model half of it and mirror it, because if you notice on the Mac Mini, this is my rendition of it, but you can see that these are going to be pretty similar in shape. So we can just mirror that. So go ahead and create a cube, bring it to the back here, bring it to the side, tab, scale it down, something like that. Maybe a little too small, honestly. Okay, cool. And then the charging port is roughly the same size as this. So maybe I sized it too big. No, let's just make it a little smaller. I'm going to place it kind of close here. That's about, so that's for this size, so maybe right here. I'm going to pull it over like that. Okay, now what we're going to do here is we're going to go in, add a modifier, and this is going to be a mirror modifier. And we can turn on clipping so that when we move the points, so I'm going to move it back a little bit, and I'm going to hit E, and I'm going to scale it down. And then when they touch, they will collide, and they can't pass each other. So that will actually help us quite a bit there. Okay, so now we want that to be smaller. I'm actually going to make it a little smaller. And then the only thing that we really have to do with this to make it better, I think, is come in here and add a loop cut, because when we do a subdivision surface, if I weren't to have that loop cut, it's going to look a little bit different. So I wanted to add a little loop cut there and then scale it down, something like that. So it gives it this effect. Okay, now we need to make it sharper at the front and back so that it's not, so right now it's round this way. If we just add the loop cuts here, we now have a different shape. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to increase the subdivisions. And honestly, I think that should probably do us. So I'm going to hit A, S, scale it on the y-axis, and then push it in there. Put it right in there. Now when I go in here, I can Boolean. Okay, now also I'm going to just hit all of these because there's a lot of Booleans. And I can do this edge split. Now with this one, I'm just going to click here, hide it, and go back onto this and bring it above. Now you can see that we also have issues with this one. So let's try playing with that. Okay, actually I know what our problem is with this one. So if we go back to the last cube that we just made here, and we tab, and then hit wireframe. It may be hard to see on mine, but you can see there is a face right here. I'm gonna go to edge select, or face select, and you can see that there's a face right there in the middle. Click on that face and click delete that face, because that was essentially saying we have two objects just stuck together, but now we have one continuous object. So now when we go to solid and we hide this, it's now working. And you can see right here, that is probably also something to do with a face. So we could also fix that as well if we can. Yep, so there's a face there and there's a face there. So we want to delete them as well, at least on mine. So be paying attention to those kinds of things because those will affect the booleans a lot. Okay, one last thing, just right click, shade smooth, and you can hide it for good. At least what I think should be good. Actually, one more thing, I'm so sorry. So I'm gonna go back into vertex selection, hit Control R, and this side is sharper than this side, so now that is looking better. Okay, let's go ahead and add the insides of these. So let's start with the Ethernet port. What we need is we just need to add a cube, tab, make it smaller, bring it to the back, bring it over, tab, make it smaller, and we're going to place this up here at the top. This is going to be the little thing, the shape of the actual Ethernet port itself. So what we have here is I'm going to hit G, move it up, maybe center it, and move it to the side. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to add a mirror modifier, and I'm going to turn on clipping, and I'm going to smush them together and then tear them apart, and they'll be stuck there. This can also, you should also, even though there won't be any problems with this, you should also fix this now, because if you ever decide to, this is, it's just better topology that will make things a little bit easier in the long run. So I'm going to go into Wireframe and select these four sides and just delete the face that's on them. Won't really affect anything, honestly, in this render, but for future things, that's probably the best way to go. So I'm going to select them, make this smaller, and bring that there. Go back into Wireframe because it's easier to select the vertices that are behind. And then I'm just going to extrude out and extrude down. And then I'm going to pull this out here, something like that. Okay. And I'm going to go in the top view, go to Wireframe so I can see what I'm doing, and make it like that. Now there is a little lip that I noticed on the Mac Mini between this and this, so that is what we're looking at there. I want it to clip, so I'm going to push it a little bit past the boundaries there. Okay, next let's make the pins for the Ethernet. So add mesh, but let's just add a cube, make it small, move it to the front or the back here where we're working, move it over. Same thing as what we've been doing. And I'm going to move it over here, tab and edit mode, make it really small, even smaller. So in comparison with these, this should be even thinner, because the pins on these are significantly smaller than the fins on those. So I'm going to move it there, and I'm going to make them roughly that tall, and then I need to make them really, well, not really wide, but kind of wide this way. Come on, lock to my axis. There we go. So now what I'm doing here is I'm going to move them. I'm going to take this, I'm going to go to my side view, and I'm just going to pull it in here. And we're not going to subdivide these at all because they're not really a big, like you can't see them very easy. But I'm going to create this shape. And then I'm going to go tab into edit object mode, and I'm going to move them back a little bit. Go into that mode, and you can notice that I have it about this size, and that's about the size of, well, maybe a little bit further back. So if I go back into Wireframe, I'm going to select these points here and move them back a little further. I should have done that with that one too. Something like that. So if I go into the side view, that's the shape that I have right now. Maybe move that up here and maybe make that a little higher so that it's kind of symmetrical. So that's the shape that I have. I'm going to go back into solid and let's array this. And let's just like that. Cool. Move it something in like that. And now you can see we have a problem, or I see a problem. I actually want this to be clipped here. So let's go back to our cube that we made for our Ethernet. And I'm going to pull it. So I'm going to go into Wireframe, hit 3 to see the side. And this is going to get really hard to see, but if you can't see, there is a triangle here and there's this here. I'm going to pull this far forward until it starts clipping. So now when I go back into Solid and I hide this, it gives this effect that it looks like they're connected here. And honestly, not quite like that. So I'm just going to push it down a little bit and forward. See if that gets me where I want. Not really. So we need to keep going a little further. So let's take this, and I'm just going to touch it a little further. I'm going to keep just moving it along the y-axis until, oh, too far now. Okay, you know what? Just to make sure that I can get to see this a little better, I'm going to go on the side view. And this is it. I want it to come right about here. Hide it, go to the front view. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay, cool. So that's looking pretty good. That was looking like a semi-decent Ethernet port. So now let's work on the power button, and this is one of the hardest. So go ahead and add a new cube, and I'm going to move it up here, and I'm going to hit 7, go to the top, and make it smaller. Okay. So what we need this to do, whoops, don't keep doing that. Okay. What we need this to do is we need this to be spherical. So let's add a subdivision surface and increase the levels of that. And we need it to be pretty flat because it's a pretty narrow button. Let me click on this. So this doesn't really indent that much, but it does indent a little bit. So let's just go in to edit mode and make it really skinny. So this is the indent. This side of it is going to be the indent side of it. So I'm just going to add thing there, and then that will always, oops, I meant to go into there. So now this side will be the indent, and I made it this way just in case we don't get this perfectly aligned very well. Okay, now something else to consider is we're going to need an edge loop here because we're going to have to make it rounded. We're going to have to match this curve. So this is where it gets kind of complicated. So I'm going to take these two and I'm going to just move them down just to make them curved. And I think that actually might do us fine. So let's rotate this here. I'm going to put it on that corner there and push it in a little bit. Okay, I might have actually made those too much. So I'm actually going to select the middle ones and I'm just going to move them in a little bit, just eyeballing it. Because you could actually undo and you could do it other ways, but I think this will be our best way. Okay, now I'm going to click on here and click add a boolean and move it above the edge split. Click on that and he's gone. Okay, well now it looks square, and that is because we did end up using a cube, and that's fine. But let's add, if we add another edge loop here, we can actually align our view with this and then go into Wireframe and just pull in all of these. So I'm going to pull in starting with the z-axis, and I'm going to pull in with the x-axis to make this round. And just keep doing that until it looks more spherical. And we're going to hope that that gets us what we want. Cool. That's looking good enough. So that's going to be the indent. Now we actually have to make the button. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to just create a new one. There's no, I mean, there probably is an easier way to do this, but this is my simplest thing that I've come up with. I'm going to make it smaller again. Yeah, so let's just do 7 here, move it out here, modifier, subdivision, increase that. Okay, now what we're going to do, you could probably actually duplicate the last thing we made, but now all we're going to do is we're going to add a point here, and we'll add a point there as well. And we're going to move this, point inward, okay? But what we want to do is we want to make this skinny so that when we do, it moves the inside more than it does the outside. So when I do that, you can tell that the outside did not move near as much as the outside. So I'm also going to put an edge loop there. That will make it crisp, and we want it to be crisp. So I'm actually going to add another loop there. We want it to be real crisp. So I'm going to go to Wireframe, hit Control-1, center here, and make this a circle now. Okay, so now if I hit, I'm just going to use, yeah, I'll just use S. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, a whole ton. It will make it smaller along all axes though, but because we won't see the back, it doesn't matter. So that's actually good for us. I'm gonna make it smaller there. Make this look round as possible. Yeah, that looks pretty round. Yeah, no real problems here. So I'm gonna go into 7, and I'm gonna try and just fit it into that spot that we were just at. You're gonna notice we're gonna also have to bend this as well to fit this curve. So scale it down, move it in, scale it, move it, scale it. Okay, and then move it out here, rotate it a hair. There's not really a super easy way to do this, so just keep hanging there. You can also hit Control R or just R twice, and it will do this orbit. So that's a little easier. And just align it up. This can take some time tweaking it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take, I'm going to go into Wireframe, and I'm going to take these, and I'm going to move them out just a hair, and move these back just a hair. Okay, now when I go to solid, we're getting closer. Need to move it just a little bit there. Okay, now I actually think we should go back to our cut here, make it visible, and I'm just going to push it further back in, because I think our problem here is we're not actually cutting it the way we want it to be. So I'm just going to push it further and hide it once more. Now you can see that our circles aren't the exact same circles, so we're going to have to play with that as well. I'm like, I keep saying this, but there's just no, that I have come up with, there's not a real easy way to do this. So let's just line that up. And now that we have them, we can visually do that. Okay, so we're getting really close. It probably would have been better to actually duplicate the last one, because we probably would have matched the same curves here, but that's okay. I can see that those 4 points look like they are actually just these ones. So I'm going to take these points here for me and move them back just a bit. Okay, there's a little clipping here. Let's just make it a little smaller then. Cool. I'm going to go back here and just tweak this one now, because I think this is where our problems actually come in. Just move that guy in a little bit there and hide him. Yeah, that's looking good. Okay, so not perfect, but you'll have to play with that one for a little while just to get it right. Okay, now you can notice that it's not in the right spot. So now what do? Well, this is actually really easy. So if we unhide this guy and make sure we have this one selected, we can actually move them at the same time, and it won't cause any issues. So I'm going to plug it in right there and hide that first one. Yeah, so now that's working just fine. Cool. So now I think we could, oh wait, no, there's a couple more modeling things we need to do. We need to do the insides of this and the insides of each of these ports. So I'm just going to add mesh and cube. Again, we'll be working with cubes a lot. That's my main go-to. And I'm going to put it in the center. So I'm going to go to Wireframe. I'm going to put it here in the center. And I'm just going to scale it down. Start with the prongs first, and then there will be a little base in the back. So I'm going to make this kind of small, and then just pull that down, and then E, right click, actually undo that. I'm going to do E, just go down a hair, E, right click, and then scale it just a little bit, E it again, scale it out, and then E down. Now the reason why we did that is it will provide some vertices for this to actually cooperate with. So I'm going to hit Subdivision Surface. We need to add a loop cut here at the front and make it a little bit longer just to fit the prong there. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to go to solid mode, and that's looking pretty good. Now you can see it's not connected to our back, and we can fix that real quick. So just click on the thing that you created for this, go into Wireframe, and just move those to meet up with them, and go ahead and hide it. Okay, now easy fix, just go into Mirror, Modifier, and we are good to go. And if you want those to be different sizes, you can make them bigger or smaller. Okay, last thing as far as modeling, we just need to include the prongs on the inside. And actually, let's do this. I'm going to take the things for those right there, duplicate them, right? So just duplicate, right click, and then hide the old one. Yeah, those. Yep. Okay, and then I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to hit S. I'll actually go into edit mode, hit S. Okay, let's see. Go into the front view, hit S, and then make them a little bit longer that way. And then I'm just going to take these, go into Wireframe, make those a little bit more crisp on the outside, and then go to the array and just stretch it out a little bit. And for me, it doesn't quite fit exactly, so I'm just going to increment a little bit more fine-tuned, something like that. Cool. So now I'm going to just Shift D, duplicate those over here, and then put them toward the top of the USB ports. I'm going to hit Shift D, do it again, and then take out the array and just put that at the top of the HDMI port. And we are now good as far as the ports go. On to shading. So now this part gets a little bit more chaotic because there's a couple of things that we need to consider while doing this. There's a couple different ways of doing this. I'm going to teach a couple different ones so that you can kind of have it in your arsenal of different ways of designing, because there's multiple different ways. So let's first start with this. So I'm going to open up that and go to the shader editor. Okay, and now there's a lot, like there's no like easy, this is the way to do this. However, this is my plan or my go-to. So I'm going to start with my principled BSDF, and I'm just going to change the color to what I want it to be. Now I need to see what I'm changing the color to, so I like to work in cycles. You guys may not have computers capable of doing this in real time, but if not, work in Eevee or just render a lot out, either way. But I'm going to show you in live this. So this is cycles real time. So this is the easiest way to do it, but the most taxing on your computer. So now if I change this, it changes the whole thing. And that is probably because this is also linked to the same material. We don't want that, so click on this too. Now if you change these, they should be independent of each other. So now what we need to do is we need to create the base color that we want for this. So I don't know, something like that for now. And then we need to add the Apple logo on here. So this is where it gets a little more complicated. So I just went to the internet, downloaded a copy of the Apple logo, and so these are all, I'm just going to show you my folder with all of the different files that I have here. So I have one for the headphone, one for the Lightning, one for the Apple logo, one for the USB, one for the HDMI. You'll want to just Google all of these, or you can create them yourself. One for the power button, and then this one is just a sine wave. I couldn't find a really good one, but you're gonna need some kind of sine wave, and this is for the charger. And then you're also gonna need this one. That's for the Ethernet port. So go on the internet and find them, or create each one of these. I'm not endorsing any of these. I don't just found them on there. This is for the sake of the tutorial, and I'm going to use them. So I'm going to go ahead and add an image texture and open the Apple logo like that. And then I'm going to connect this straight into the base color. Now it just ruined our whole thing of what we had already, and that's fine because I was going to do that. But now if we hit search for a mix RGB, we can plug that in, and we actually want, let's just move this one here, and we want the alpha, depending, like mine has, so my Apple logo, this white is actually an alpha channel. There's no color there at all. So I'm using that to my advantage. If there's a white stay tuned and I can show you how to fix that as well. So I'm going to, this will now be your main base color, and you can see it changing up there, up here in the corners. The main problem we have here is this is not UV unwrapped. So go ahead and hit Tab, hit A, U, and Unwrap. Okay, so maybe it was already unwrapped. Maybe I lied to you, I'm sorry. But if we separate this and we go into the UV editor, we can see how it is unwrapped, and it's not unwrapped the way we want. So I'm going to hit A on all of these, hit S, I'm going to throw them all up into this part. And then I'm going to click on the top parts here, go to the top, so I'm going to hit 7 on my numpad to go to the top here, and then hit U and project from view. And now I'm going to scale this all the way up and position it centered and keep scaling it. Okay, now you can see we've got some other Apple logos going in here. We don't want that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take it off from repeat and clip it. Okay, now here's another trick. So on the Apple logo, it's shinier than the rest of this. So what we need to do here is we need to take the alpha channel and plug it into the roughness. So let's do that. And you won't see a whole lot yet. I'm also, so that you can see the reflections and things real time, and this, I would recommend this as well. Go into the world and turn on, click on color and do an environment texture. And I'm going to open up just a default texture that I had. You can go to hdrihaven.com, I think it's .com or .org, I can't remember exactly, but HDRI Haven has some great HDRI photos for you to use. But I'm just going to pick one like this to use, and that will give you something real to go off of. So it's not looking the way we want it. The easiest way to do this is, I keep hitting tab. So I'm going to hit Shift A and click on Color Ramp. This will allow you to adjust some of the parameters here as far as the color of the black and white. You won't see too much difference. Another thing you can do is a brightness contrast. This might be the easiest one to use because you can always just decrease the contrast or increase it, and it will give you difference. So you can already see in mine, by increasing the contrast, it's becoming more rough, I guess. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. So one other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this metallic all the way up because the Mac Mini is metallic. It is a metal. However, you can see it just ruined everything. So I think the reason being is we actually have this opposite. So this is actually pretty diffused. You can see there's no reflections coming off of it, especially right here. So these trees back here, they should be reflecting off this and not this. So this is where the color ramp comes into play. We can take this black, and we can take this white, and we can flip them. And you'll see that the results are now where we want them to be. So I hope that was already impressive. I think this is one of the coolest parts about shading. So, and I'm going to turn down this because I think that might was a little too bright white. Cool. So that's looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to go into this guy and start doing some of his shaders. So for him, what we're going to do is we're just going to be using just this, and we're going to turn the metallic all the way up, and the roughness, you can leave it approximately half, and yeah, that's pretty much the way he's going to look. So to give you a little bit more realistic look, we can add in a floor, and that will add light that can bounce off. Okay, so this isn't working right at all already. Oh, we didn't change the color. So I'm gonna make it not quite black, but maybe like that, somewhere in there. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. So let's go with that. We could even make it maybe like a touch darker, but I wouldn't do too much. I think that's like pretty close to the Mac Mini look right there. So, okay, from now on, let's copy and paste this, or just copy this, because we're going to want this as we go about doing some of these other things. And we can even link, this can be the base black material. So we can even link some of these, like this, to the base black material. And that will just take on the material of that. Let's take our button there and do the same thing. Okay, so I think that's looking pretty good. I mean, we're getting really close to this looking like the Mac Mini. The major things that we need to do here is we need to turn this into the aluminum. And actually, I found that it's very similar to this one. So actually, I'm going to take this and copy and paste it into this material. The problem, we can't just take the material from it because the material actually keeps that. So we can't just quite do that, but we can do that. And then we can even change some of the settings if we need to a little bit. I might make it a little less rough, but that's just for personal preference. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of do what you want with that, but I think that's looking pretty good. These, let's do them real quick. So those are gonna be completely metallic, and we're gonna want them to be copper color. So something on that line's an orangish, and they're gonna be, I'm pretty sure they weren't very rough. So let's just maybe like 0.25 in that range. Yeah, so they're looking like the pins in for those. So now we need to just come over, and so I'm just gonna take the material from this one and then put it on all these. So I'm just gonna rename this to aluminum material. I don't know, maybe just that, aluminum mat. So now I just come over here and you can apply that to each one of these. Okay, now for this one, we're gonna have something done a little differently. So I'm just gonna make a new material, and let's make this completely black to start with. It's gonna be a very dark material. If you look at the photos here, at least for my rendition of it, that's them. And if I look at pictures online, they look pretty similar to that too. So let's go ahead and do that. These are going to be fully metallic as well. And the roughness, I think I'm going to leave it because I want some light to get in there. And fins these are painted. Like metal doesn't just come black. So these are painted. So I'm going to leave them roughness at 0.5. You can kind of change that if you want, but I think that's looking pretty good. Now if we kind of come over here, yeah, so those fins, we're getting some good shine off of them. They look metal. Right now, this is pretty darn good. So some of the things that we're going to do is we're going to add each of the little icons across these. And this one is going to be different than what we did for this. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to actually decal it and just stick them on there. I think this will be the easiest way for this situation, and it'll open your opportunities to more things you can do. Also, I just realized from looking at this from a distance, that power button looks maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it looks a little small. Let's go ahead and fix that. So I'm gonna go back to this mode, click on that, and I'm just gonna scale it up a little bit. Yeah, cool. That looks a little better. It just looked kind of small to me. So go back into render mode. Now what we're going to do is I'm just going to hit add mesh plane, hit 1, rotate it by 90, and move it all the way back. Oh, I put it on the wrong plane here. Hit 3, and then 90, and then move it this back, and then scale it down. I'm going to move it up here. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to actually take our textures that we have for each one of these, mask out the white so that it's transparent, and then just paste it on here. And we're going to do that through some modifiers. So we're going to use the subdivision and just do simple. This will make it so that it can lay flat against objects, even on round corners. And then we're going to also want to add the shrink wrap. And it is right here. Okay, and then you can just click on the target that you want it to be, and it'll just paste it right on there. Now you can see that we don't have a texture on here yet, but it's already messed up. All we have to do is add an offset of 0.001, and now it's just slightly above, so that's working pretty good. Let's go in, hit tab, hit U, and UV unwrap that. And you'll see it looks perfectly in that square. Let's go in and add a new material for this, and this material is going to take on the same properties as this material. So I'm going to go in here, copy this, go in here, and paste it. So now if we put that on there, it won't do a whole ton yet, other than just look. I think I copied the wrong one. Yeah, okay, that's better. So now it has the same color. You don't have to do this, but it will clean up anything that you have. So that's what I'm gonna do for that. Now let's just go ahead and add an image and open the image for, let's do the USB ports. So let's do the lightning USB ports. I'm gonna go into, so the main thing, if you're looking for these on the internet, one thing to keep in mind is the ones that look like they have a transparent background, sometimes they don't. So make sure it doesn't have the grids. Make sure that it's either a white or a transparent. And I'll teach you both ways to do it, because you can do it either way. I picked one that's white. So let me open the file up real quick. This is what it looks like. So this is a white color, this is a black, or at least a gray. Like these are two different colors. Make sure that that's the case, or that this is completely transparent. Those are the only two options you can use for this. So yeah, let's go ahead. I'm just gonna drag the color. I'm actually gonna make a mix here, a mix shader. And then I'm gonna throw in this one into the bottom and then have a transparent and then plug that in there. Now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna have it do which one it's going to be. So to show like more difference here, if I make this white and I turn the shader one way or the other, now it's transparent, but it has this. I hope that makes sense. I'm gonna undo that though, because we want this to be, just in case something goes a little wrong, that will mask it a little bit better. So we're gonna use this and add in a color ramp, and we're just gonna throw it straight from the color into the factor. And if you plug that in, you can start to see that it's already working. I'm going to make this white again just so you can see the difference. It's just the opposite is the problem. So, and you can get away with actually just going straight there. You actually don't need this, but this will give you more flexibility in some of these. And so this is a tutorial on how to do things, even if it's the case. So you can actually turn that up and it will make the lines crisper, or you could reverse it. And that's what we're gonna want to do that with this one. And you can just turn that down just like that. Now it's upside down. How do we fix that? Well, go into edit mode, make sure it's unwrapped right, and then come over here, hit A and move it up, and then rotate it 180. And then come back in here, click where it says repeat, and click clip. And if you get this is because it's the white. I forgot about that. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to, instead of clip, we're going to want to extend. And we'll stretch the white all the way out here. Because this is transparent, this is white. This is just the easiest way. You could also take the alpha and do some stuff with it, but this is just too easy to worry about that. Then all we got to do is place that in spot, scale it down a little bit. And the fancy thing about this is, even if I move this further away, it's always going to be stuck to that. So now we're going to hit shift, duplicate it, change this. You don't want to change it right away. You want to click this 2, because if not, it would do to both of them. And then we're going to click this and just change it to the HDMI logo that you have. Now, it's not going to be correct, so just go into tab, hit U, unwrap, and then over here, just scale it up and make it fit, and then rotate it, for me, 90 degrees. And then come over here, and I'm going to make it a little bigger. Looks great. Cool. On to the next one. Duplicate it. And I'm going to click this, click that, change it to the USB. Now my USB, so if you've been working with white backgrounds, this works fine. However, if you haven't, then we're going to want to do something a little different. So this one is one of those. So I'm going to make it a little smaller so that we don't have the clipping issues with that. And I'm going to hit U, or go into edit mode, hit U, unwrap, and then make it fit. So it's fitting here, but you don't see anything. And you might be wondering why. Well, and this is an easy fix. All we have to do with this one is we need to, so this is the easy way to figure out what's going on here. So we can take the color and we can plug it straight into the base color here for a minute and plug this in. And we still don't get anything. It's because black and transparent are really similar. So instead of alpha, instead of color, let's just plug in alpha and plug in all those things back to the way we had it. And boom. So essentially what we did here before is we made an alpha channel for this to do that. Whereas this one is the alpha channel straight from the image. So depending on what you got, either way works. And then I'm going to rotate this by 90 degrees. And we're good to go. Cool. Now shift, duplicate that, put it over here by the Ethernet. And I'm going to now click that, and change it to the Ethernet, which is this one. And it is this kind. So all I gotta do is change that, hit duplicate, change that, change that, and then click Ethernet, or sorry, the power one, which is the sine wave. Now this one was a little weird for me. So first of all, it's backwards, so we need to take it like this. So if I throw this alpha in there, this was actually the alpha channel. For some reason, I don't know, whoever made that did it really wonky. So what we need to do is we need to throw the alpha in here and flip it. So that's what I've done there. And you can get away with just that. However, if I go into edit mode here, hit U, unwrap, and the main problem with this is it didn't fit, but if the Apple logo or the Apple charging one is a little bit more squished. So all we gotta do is just stretch it out like that. And we're done. So yeah, easy peasy. Okay, now go back into object mode, duplicate it, move it over here. Just gonna check some things. Yeah, looks good. Okay. Okay, now this one may cause us problems. So when we move it down here, it has a hard time stretching to that. So this is really easy. Let's just take off the shrink wrap. Okay, and I'm gonna go into object mode for a quick second. Hit 7, or maybe go to wireframe, that'll be easier because we can see the lines easier. And then rotate it and just place it really close to it. And because it's just right there and we're not going to be rotating, well, even if we rotate, we won't be able to see the difference between this. So there might be better ways, but this is an easy hack into this, so easy hack. So we're good with this. I'm just going to go back to rendering, and then let's just change it from that to this, and the power. And this one is the color, so I just need to change that. Hit tab, hit U, unwrap it. It's upside down, so just hit 180. We're good to go. Looks maybe a little bit big, so maybe I'll just make it a little smaller. Cool. Now, that's looking pretty good. One thing that I actually forgot as far as modeling is we need to put an audio jack port. So let's try and do that real quick. I'm gonna go back to this view, hit Shift A, add mesh cube, move it up here, scale it down, stretch it out, scale it down a little bit more, add in 2 of those, scale it up, move it over, 1, maybe scale it up a little more. Okay, looking pretty good. Add a modifier onto it, subdivision, turn it up to 3 on both of those, and throw it in there. Now just boolean it, hide it, and we're good to go. That one's now made. So now I'm just gonna click on this guy, move it down, and go to render, click the 2, click the folder button, and give it the headphones. Now there's a little bit of issues, and it's because we need to go and UV unwrap it again. Okay, and you can see that it's stretching some weird things, and let's just turn this one to clip instead of extend, because this one we're actually using the alpha channel, and you can do that with the alpha channel. It's pretty easy. And then 180 it. Okay, so all I need to do is move that down a little bit, and I can see that my audio jack isn't centered the way I want it to, so let's center that a little better. Now it's too far. Okay, you can use your arrow keys. Okay, that's gonna have to do. If you want it perfect, you can keep spending time on it. But yeah, so then all you have to do is just throw a camera in there to whatever perspective you want, and there's your Mac Mini. Well, that HDMI looks huge. Let's make it a little smaller, and we're done. So if you have any questions, post a comment, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. This was a long tutorial. Hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time on Blender Know How. Thanks.